Want to let them know that we have zero tolerance for ideology and obscene materials being integrated into our curriculum. And so Marsha's ministry is researching that sort of thing and making us aware so we can do what it takes to stand up for our children, for our students here in Tift County and beyond. So we are so glad to have her here tonight. What I believe the plan is going to be is that I'm going to lead us in a word of prayer. Then Marsha's going to come and do her presentation. And then at the end of her presentation, she's going to give you opportunity for any questions that you might have. So we'll go from there. Join me in a word of prayer if you will. And I will turn it over to Marsha. Father God, we are so incredibly grateful for your goodness, for your grace, and for your mercy. Lord, we love you tonight simply because of Jesus. And we thank you that Jesus gives us the ability through the power of the Holy Spirit to be kind, to be considerate, but at the same time to stand up for truth. And so God, tonight, we don't apologize for that. We don't want anyone to feel we're coming across in an abrasive manner, but at the same time, Father, we want truth to prevail. We know there's not multiple truths, there's only one truth. And we're just simply interested, Lord, in the livelihood and the education of the children and students in Tift County. And so Lord, I pray that we might be guardians of that because we have the ability to do so in a free nation like the United States. God, there's many encroachments upon those freedoms this day and time, but we want to just have wisdom about how we proceed and be careful that as we join hands that people would see the love of Jesus most of all. So we pray, God, tonight that as our minds are filled with information, our hearts would burn with a burden for the children that you've entrusted to us. And thank you for Marsha, for her ministry, God, and for the information she's going to share with us tonight. Father, I pray that we be faithful to be responsible for that information that we're going to hear. And we give you all the praise. For it's in Jesus' name we pray these things. Amen. Okay, Marsha. Y'all welcome Marsha tonight. Amen.
Am I on? I am. Okay. All right. Well, it is great to be here with you this evening. I am just very grateful that Victory Baptist would open up your facility to allow us to come and to share with one another. I just want to be here for you to be a consultant, to share with you some of the findings that I've had. I do this in several school districts, and the idea that is behind all of this is just like what Jay just prayed. It is in search for truth and to educate even our administrators and school boards on what is happening in the sex education field. So I started with Choose Now just a couple of years ago. This is actually about my anniversary, so it's about 2 years that I've been with them now. And the idea was that I would simply just be going into the schools and teaching abstinence curriculum to the schools, and the children, but we could not get into the schools. It's kind of a challenge to do that because it is a landmine kind of a subject to teach, if you will. So we've been working at that for a few years with Choose Now. But the thing is that once we did start getting a little bit of traction, the pandemic hit and no one was in the schools. So during the pandemic, what I ended up doing is just researching and researching and researching. So that is why and how I got the idea to take this into a different kind of framework in order to find out and reveal to people the truth about what is going on in the schools. So particularly what I started out doing too is, and I was asked to let you know this in advance, I have been in contact with the administration and the school board, and I've given them every bit of friendly information that I can give them to help them know that I'm your friend. I am not here to attack our school system. I'm not here to tear it down, but I am here to defend children. So the last conversation that I sent to the school system was on June the 21st, and it was an email to the chairman of the board, and I would like to read that for you just to set the tone of where we're at. And it was to Mr. Jonathan Jones, and there's a carbon copy to Mickey Weldon, Michael Norman, and Adam Hathaway. And this is what I've written. I have heard, dear Mr. Jones, I have heard wonderful comments from so many people about you. I appreciate your service in the Tift County School System and look forward to meeting you. The reason I am writing is that I have conducted a review of the Purpose Prep Social Emotional Learning Curriculum used by Tift County Schools and wish to share some concerns. The goal of Choose Now is to review various curricula throughout the Coastal Plains RESA in order to raise awareness regarding harmful ideologies, the sexualization of children, and parents' rights. Today's culture, as it relates to sex education and SEL, social emotional learning curriculum, is bringing parents to school board meetings to express their concerns and in some cases outrage. I would like to discuss my findings with you before our community meeting that will be held on July 22nd in Tifton. Please rest assured that Choose Now is an organization that seeks to provide winsome solutions for schools and communities. My contacts for Tift County Schools have been Mickey Weldon and Michael Norman. I am sure they can fill you in on my discoveries, and we can move forward to report to the community what standards, types of curricula, and protocols you will use in the future. This will be very informative and hopefully helpful for you to maintain the student population in spite of the adversity in America. Peaceful solutions and unity are high on our list to gauge our success as concerned citizens. I look forward to hearing back from you. Very sincerely, Marsha Metzger. And that was sent June 21st. And regretfully, I've not heard back anything at this point. So anyway, I'm sure that they know that we are having the meeting, but I can also understand the reluctance in this day and age to come, or to respond. This is just where we'll go with you'll understand once I do the presentation. So let's get started. Now, this is the seal of confidence that's right here on this very colorful picture, and I am hoping that Tift County will be one of the first to earn this seal of confidence, because what this will mean is that we are confident that they are teaching wholesome education to our students. How many of you in here would like to see wholesome education taught to our students? I think we're all on the same page, but how many of you are concerned that that might not be the case in some places? Now, I don't think that the intention of our administrators or our school board is to have that happen. I honestly do not. So let's just set the stage with that. So, sex education, social emotional learning, which I will start from this point forward saying SEL, you'll know what I mean. It is a mental health curriculum. And library auditing, this is what I get into to help you understand and know how to protect your children. This is the coverage area. That I cover as well. But all of these, this is called the Coastal Plains RESA, and that stands for the Regional Educational Service Agency. How many of you knew we had a RESA? A lot of people just don't understand all of the formats of school, and you'll notice this is a good bit like our voting district even. It's a pretty good area. But the RESA, we have the director of the RESA, it's funny, he lives a quarter of a mile from my house in Lenox. So that's where they are, and they provide a lot of academic support to the teachers and the superintendents, things of that nature. So what I want to do is set the tone. This is what's happening in America. Some of these videos, it doesn't necessarily mean it's happening in Tift, but if you could go ahead and play that video, this will set the tone for our talk right now.
Comprehensive sexuality education, and why should you be concerned about it? Isn't education a good thing, especially about something as universal as sex? And if you're going to educate, shouldn't it be comprehensive? Well, maybe. It depends on who's doing the educating, who it's intended for, and for what purpose. Sex ed used to mean learning about human reproduction and was usually taught in high school biology. Not anymore. According to UNESCO, the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, CSE is a process of teaching and learning about the cognitive, emotional, physical, and social aspects of sexuality. Sounds okay, until that is, you pull back the curtain to understand who else is behind CSE and why. Organizations like SECUS, Planned Parenthood, Advocates for Youth, the Human Rights Campaign, and others which have motives for CSE that go well beyond what you might think. SECUS, or Sexuality Information and Education Council of the United States, which despite the name is not a government organization, has recently a devotee of the eugenist and serial pedophile Alfred Kinsey. What about Planned Parenthood, another one of the big sponsors of CSE? This organization was started by Margaret Sanger, who believed abortion was a means to cull the racially inferior or mentally unfit from society. For Planned Parenthood, using a gender transformative approach, CSE is a means to transform gender roles and advance equitable social systems. Advocates for Youth, co-sponsor of an organization called the Future of Sex Education, sees CSE as a means of advancing social, racial, and reproductive justice and equity. This thing called intersectionality, which translated means victim identity politics, and of course, language inclusivity, by which is meant people's gender pronouns. These are the groups behind CSE. But who is CSE intended for? College students, who presumably are mature enough to understand and weigh the implications of such material? Not hardly. The audience is children, grade schoolers beginning in kindergarten, with sophisticated materials targeted to each successive grade. From kindergarten to second grade, teachers are advised to rely on books with titles like, Who Are You? My Princess Boy, and Jacob's New Dress. From third to sixth grade, we see titles like Uncle Bobby's Wedding, King and King, and It's Perfectly Normal. By the time kids reach middle school, the curriculums are so sexually explicit, we can't even describe them here. Which brings us to the purpose of CSE. It's hardly a secret. In California, the Department of Education published a 700-page document called the Framework that outlines in great detail the requirements of CSE. From this document, it's clear what the goal of CSE is. It's to promote a worldview with 4 identifiable goals. The first of which is to advance SOGI ideology in all K-12 public education. SOGI stands for Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity, and conveys the idea that both sexual attraction and gender exist along a spectrum. One's biological sex is meaningless. CSE teaches children to embrace subjective sexual and gender identities, if need be, through the force of law. The second goal of the CSE worldview is to sexualize children. CSE encourages children to become sexually active beginning in grade school. The evidence for this is amply provided in the various approved curriculums. The third goal is to destroy the nuclear family as the indispensable support of a healthy society, or at least the idea of it. CSE teaches that all arrangements and groupings of consenting adults are equally valid. Fourth, and finally, CSE seeks to undermine parental authority. A parent's conventional understanding of sex and gender are taught as negative stereotypes and may even be signs of spiritual abuse. Parents are discouraged from viewing CSE teaching materials by a mass of bureaucratic red tape. Children are coached on how to get contraceptives, treatment for STDs, and even abortions, all without a parent's consent or even knowledge. Taken together, as SECUS's motto declares, the purpose of CSE is to bring about social change. But is this kind of social change a goal shared by tax-paying parents of children in the public school system? Should it be? Forewarned is forearmed. I'm Mark Schneider with Protect Our Kids.
Mark Schneider is part of a group that is a national group that does just tremendous work like this, and he really helps people to just understand nationally what is going on and why we as parents and community leaders really need to be engaged to protect our communities and to educate others. So the next the two platforms for sex education, first of all, is abstinence, which is pretty much what I teach. I think everyone in here pretty much understands what abstinence is. And this is to help students focus on their goals, because if you start being sexually active as a young person, you can get away from your path. So we do a lot of educating, try to help students come up with their life plan. We inform them to stick to their goals, things of that nature, and starting in sexuality early, it will not lead to that. So anyway, abstinence also coincides with the current Georgia standards and statutes for the law. Comprehensive sex education, also known as sexual risk reduction in Georgia, is possibly sponsored by Planned Parenthood, or in Georgia, it's through an organization called GCAP. GCAP stands for Georgia Coalition for Adolescent Power and Potential. Years ago, it started out with the P's on the end, stood for pregnancy prevention. The switch over has been, there's a lot of activism training. This organization began 25 years ago with Jane Fonda, and she is very engaged with Planned Parenthood. So you can see gcap.org. They will get funding from the government, a lot of the government grants, and try to come to schools to get this curriculum that is far more radical instilled into the school systems. So gcap.org, you can find out more about them, and whenever we see that coming into one of our school systems in our RESA area, we go and connect with the school and let them know what it's about. So through auditing, we revealed the current platform on sex education, whether it's abstinence or comprehensive sex ed, like was described in the video, whether it is radical or improper elements in the curricula, compliance with Georgia state laws, Board of Education rules, local Board of Education rules, and then we also gauge it on how transparent is the school system with the parents. Things that I find when I talk with the administrators, I have had so many just in shock over some of the things that I show them. They had no idea, most likely because they're paying attention to academics and budgets, and they're paying attention to their staffing needs, a lot of things of running the school, and we can appreciate that, but however, we have to stand guard and gatekeep. Open record requests pretty much is what we have to start with, because this is a volatile time right now. We have to do that. Everyone is subject to open record requests, from your curriculum to your email communications to all kinds of things, how it purchases, anything like that is open for public knowledge. Choose Now uses this method to gain factual evidence of what is currently taught and the reason the curriculum was chosen. These record requests set a serious tone with the administration of the school because it brings them into accountability with the general public, and that is really a good thing. The laws serve us well because it's a safety net for the administrators, so they can't be pressured by any people that are coming in through publishing companies or even from the Georgia Department of Education at state level. So we get to consider what is good for our communities. The seal of confidence here, when we talk with them about that, we also look at the several compliance, the board issues that need to be corrected, mainly because the laws and the rules are not enforced and the parents have little to no knowledge of them. So I don't know how many of you have ever really stuck your nose in the law code as it pertains to schools. I never did until I started doing this, but this is something that we have to do. We have to know, because just like if you stand on the Word of God as a Christian, you need to also stand on the laws when it comes to how things are organized in the schools. It's the standard that's set. So it has to change, though. More people need to be informed on what should be happening. So your school, on their website, they really should have the opt-out forms posted for sex education. By law, you can opt your children out of this information. They should also have open record request information on the website, and Tift County does a great job at that. They should have sex education curriculum posted with the ISBN number, and I have not found one school that's willing to do that in the entire RESA. And that needs to change. If we're going to teach it, we need to be upfront about it, right? We have to know what we're having. So also, there should be a health advisory committee in each school. Now, we just had our health standards revised. That just happened this past year. So all schools right now should be getting new sex education material that will meet the new standards. And what happens with that is that there should be a committee that consists of mostly non-teaching parents that represent a diversity of the school. That is who is supposed to oversee the selection of the sex education curriculum, along with a biological male in the high school and a biological female in the high school. Isn't it interesting that today's date you have to say biological with that, but anyway. All right, so all curriculum and media center purchases, they're all approved locally, and the authority in the schools is first we the people, then it's the local board of education, and then it's the administration. There are many school systems right now that think that the school board is, subservient to the administration, and that is not the case. The local board of education, they are to represent the people. But mutual respect, see that line down there? Mutual respect is a very powerful tool. It's always great to be respectful to one another, so we should do that. So here's the law about the school boards, and when you read this highlighted part, given the specialized nature and unique role of membership on the local board of education, this elected office should be characterized and treated differently from the other elected offices where the primary duty is independently to represent constituent views. Y'all, that is key. Everyone needs to know that this is key. Now, when we talk to the school board and we meet whoever the representative is for our address, each one of us should have one, and I will be putting some information on our group page about how to find out who yours is. That is how you are to communicate with the school, to let them know what it is that you desire to see. And if we see something that is not right, we just have a conversation. Communication is wonderful, right? Okay, so the other one, here's another one that as it continues, the purchases of curricula and books, that is also local control. By the law, all of it is decided locally. We do not have to subject our students to anything that is put on us from the state level. We don't. It is local control. When I was in the Capitol this past winter, when we were working on some legislation with some of our officials there for the libraries, that was the main thing that the senators kept saying to us. We want to make sure we remember this is local control. Every school system needs to decide for themselves what they will have in their school district. So that is true. There's your law. So what were the school boards learning in Georgia this year? Now y'all, this right here, it concerns me a lot. This is what the Georgia School Board Association brought to the table. Let's revision, reimagine, and reinvent K-12 public education with equity and social emotional well-being for students and the staff. Equity and social emotional well-being for students and staff. These words mean things that many times the general public does not understand. And we need to really understand these terms. Equity doesn't mean what equity used to mean. It doesn't. So there's a lot of definitions that we'll be listing. It was funny, I was talking with one of my friends that helps me format a lot of things, and we decided that we needed a page on my webpage that's the glossary for the glossed over, because I don't know about you, but I cannot keep up with all of these woke terms. I just cannot do it. I don't generally get bogged down in it either, because you can identify just a few things. Like on the video, he identified 4 things that were going on. With wisdom, you can identify things to where you don't have to soak your mind in all of this, because who wants to? So anyway, these were the keynote speakers that were there at the event. We had Brian Kemp, Richard Woods, who is from Tifton, he's our state school superintendent, and then Valerie Wilson, who is the executive director of the Georgia State Board Association. Now, unless they don't understand what those words mean, I mean, they're aware of this. I have to say they must be aware of this. So that's something for you to evaluate for yourself as we move forward. The young man, Brandon Fleming, on the bottom there, I would suggest all of you go to YouTube and look up this young man. He has a stellar story. I mean, the story, it will move you. It's really a good one. And I'm not sure about the other speakers, but these were who were there. These are our leaders, so hopefully they understand what's going on with those terms. This is where social emotional learning, SEL, started. This company organization is called CASEL, and it's found at casel.org. It started originally in the Fetzer Institute. Fetzer Institute is pretty much a New Age organization that also involves a lot of universalism, a lot of spiritual formation practices that many traditional Christians probably wouldn't align themselves with. Let's read that last sentence. Right before the bar, it says, schools were being inundated with a slew of positive youth development programs such as drug prevention, violence prevention, sex education, civic education, and moral education, to name a few. Social emotional learning was introduced as a framework that addresses the needs of young people and helps to align and coordinate school programs and programming. Okay, so they're coming in, providing this service, this overall framework. Now, if you'll notice the founders here, we have, there's several people, and I just noticed this particular one philanthropist, which is a Rothschild, which these people want everything in our world right now to be at the global level. They want to develop global citizenship. Social emotional learning, if you look at this platform or this cafeteria line here, they are serving up so much in this elective overlay. And ultimately what social emotional learning, what casel.org wants to do with this particular framework, as they call it, is they want all of these things served up. It keeps everyone stirred up. They want this in your companies. How many of you have already heard that there's company training going on with a lot of the woke terminology and everything? Coca-Cola, I think everyone's calling it Woca-Cola now. There's a lot of that going on. So when you're considering that all of these different offerings, and there's a lot more, I just couldn't fit on the picture that I could have put there. We're looking at all of these things. I know of so many people that are just studying CRT more than anything, thinking they've got to be an expert on this, keeping their mind busy with this. And while I think that studying these different things are, you want to be informed, but while you're busy doing that, this framework is going on, and it's distracting you from this framework. So keep that in the front of your mind. The Fetzer Institute, where it started, let's just look at this. It's New Age, universalism, and etc. Democracy, we're going to be strengthening our democracy through spiritual practices and new ways to bridge divides. Together we can cultivate a sacred connections and build a shared vision for our communities and our country. And then there's spiritual formation, exploring and sharing ways to support our personal spiritual growth across the lifespan to help us live in sacred relationship with ourselves, each other, and the natural world. Folks, in this social and emotional learning program that I went through that is here in Tift County, I don't know if they're still using it. I know they paused it because I've not heard back from them. But there is mantra taught in it. There are lessons that are in there that you should be aware of. And parents need to get open record requests on this and look at it for themselves to know if they want their child involved in this. This is not an academic elective or subject. This will not keep your child out of a college, and we as a community can have it turned off and we can reject it, and that is my recommendation, as you'll see. So this is the SEL pledge, and activist civics is something that they're teaching throughout some of these lessons as well. Let's look at just the bottom that I enlarged. It says, I will work alongside others to identify and dismantle inequities, stand up to injustice, and use our collective voice and power to create spaces where everyone thrives. I will use my power, my privilege, my time, my work, my influence, my lived experience, my love, my passion, my energy, and my resolve. Because when we commit to social and emotional learning, we can build stronger schools and communities today and a more just and caring world tomorrow. Folks, when did we start having a religion at school? I mean, this is a doctrine. This is not just ideology, it's applied ideology. So now let's talk about data collection. These social emotional learning programs, they collect data. The answers that you provide in these things, this data collection begins. This data could also be collected on other subjects as well. Since we have gone computerized, we're in the Chromebooks now. I don't really know fully how much information that they are doing, but when you look on this next page, all I know is when you get into that particular website, you have drop-down lists for days. And this data record on your child, on your family, what will it reveal about your family? You need to look at this. I mean, this is ceps.ed.gov. You can take a picture of it if you want to. I mean, you can snap pictures of any of these, but I will have them on our group page. So, data collection is a huge thing. Hello. Oops. There we go. So, Edgenuity, this is the virtual platform that Tift County has. And Edgenuity, kind of think of it like it's an online data locker, okay? And what happens is students will have all their books assigned to them, different classes, whatever. So they just sign into Edgenuity and they get a student account. That is what my open record request got for me, was a student account. It took me several tries to get it. I had to be very persistent with the administration and say, no, if it's digital, you still have to give me access. It's just like a book. So we went back and forth a little bit, and we worked it out to where I could get access. So I have an account for Edgenuity, and then Purpose Prep is actually in the Edgenuity program. Edgenuity is owned by a company called Weld North, and Purpose Prep is their social emotional learning program. So the Edgenuity Health book is assigned for the health class, and we will touch on that as well. So now, let's consider this. Purpose Prep, the social emotional learning curriculum in there, is showcased on their Facebook page. I mean on their web page. This is Purpose Prep's web page. So they're proud that Tift County is subscribing to their services. So, yeah. Mostly called SEL, the overall theory or pedagogy in reaching the social and emotional needs of a child so they can learn. Because if a child is all disturbed mentally, emotionally, there's no learning going on. So trying to apply this mental health approach to students is pretty much their overall theory. Many administrators, though, they have no idea what's going on in the background with the collection of data and things like that. Here is one of the things that really concerns me about this particular program. If you go on the privacy policy on edgenuity.com and scroll to the bottom of the privacy policy page, you will notice this cute little unicorn. And so within Edgenuity, when you're answering all these questions, and these questions go into this publisher's system, and they're collecting all of this data, like that was on the other page I showed you a moment ago. Well, this particular publisher is also collecting data, and then when they're collecting data, they're taking it all the way up into the global atmosphere with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So when you think about, they're promoting this concept called interoperability, and what that means is that all computers will work together. You can look all of this up. Everything is factual. The privacy policy, plus, how do you possibly provide oversight for 3 different websites? If you have active lessons with any particular publisher, what parent or what administrator can possibly keep up with a live website? If we don't secure our educational resources to know what we've approved, especially if it has something to do with sexuality, I mean, this is not a responsible way of keeping our children protected. Oh, and also, the last point too, is the teacher's view of the assignments the same thing as what the student is seeing? I don't know. How much do we want to trust the publisher that it's the same? I don't know. So here is this key sentence. We may share information if we believe in good faith that the disclosure is necessary to protect the rights, property, or personal safety of our users. Wait till you see some of the questions that they're asked. And this particular sentence, if you have a child, say that they have gender dysphoria, they think they are transgender, and they are putting things in this system, and this child is confused, and the parents are trying to provide leadership for them, but they are putting this information into this system, and say that the mental health team there at the school or whoever is getting the information, what's to say that they don't say that you are abusive to your child if you don't let them take puberty blockers? This is happening in America. I know it for a fact. The childparentrights.org, the Child Parents' Right Campaign is the name of their 501c3. This is something, they hear these cases exclusively. So when you look into this kind of information, that is highly concerning to me as a leader in this role. When I hear, because I work with the paralegal for this who takes all of the phone calls and the heartbreaking stories of these parents that have had their child socially influenced at school by lessons like this, and even if you opt that child out of those lessons and you're going to a school that is still teaching this, the social impact of the other students around them. And what happens when you have a third grader, and say this third grader comes in one day and says, and the teacher says, this is no longer Sammy, this is Sally. That's another thing. So these kind of situations are going on in states, and I'm not saying that it's not going on in Georgia. I know of schools that things like this are happening in the Atlanta area, and I know that we're not like the Atlanta area here, but this is what we have to gatekeep for, because there are in vogue little groups in the schools that are, the girls think it's cool to be lesbian now. Don't tell me that they don't, because I know some of them, they do. And that is what the attorneys at the Child and Parent Rights Campaign describe as social contagion. Anti-racism. These lessons are in the Purpose Prep program, and now I want to explain something to you. When I originally started studying social and emotional learning, I actually called Purpose Prep and tried to get access to being trained as one of their teachers. And that's just what we do to find out what's in it. That's what we do for kids, to make sure, just to see what's going on. Well, they would not give me that kind of a license, but boy, they were forthcoming and just talked with me about all of the new updates that would be coming in. I called them in October, and they told me that the new updates that were coming in, I just acted like I was a customer, and I just said, well, let me ask you this. Are you guys going to be teaching anything about the anti-racism or LGBTQ? And the young man on the other line, he was just like, yeah. That's exactly why they're in the meeting, and I can't get a sales rep for you right now. They're in there talking about that right now. We're going to have a whole new list of classes to come out in November. So that is what happened here. And so I was able, when I did my open record request on Tift County, I was able to intercept these classes before they were ever taught here, and I thank God for it. So anyway, on this anti-racism assignment, this is sending a child to go to the Harvard website, to the Project Implicit Bias Test, to have your child register on Harvard's website in one of their studies to test your bias. So you've got data being collected there on your kid, and then they come back and write about it in the SEL program. I don't know if you're good for that. Memories. So let's trigger some kids here. Examine the memories you have. Which memories include other people and which are without people? Consider and argue why you believe or don't believe that the best memories are created when other people are involved. They're supposed to write about that. Folks, this is mental health, and this belongs with a doctor-patient privilege. This shouldn't be in a publishing company collection that's given to school leadership. The comment that was given to me when I spoke with some of the folks in the administration here in Tift County was, well, we got this program and we want to follow the data. And this is to me, it's just too much information to be giving. You know, what is one idea from the past few lessons that's helped you find new meaning from your life story? How can you begin to think of your past experience as a launching pad for new relationships? And how can you balance being vulnerable enough to connect with someone at a very personal level with the risk of oversharing or overwhelming them? Which side should you err on? What does this have to do with academics and school? How about diversity? Let's talk about introducing your identity. You know, I mean, this activity is intended to allow participants to introduce their identity and dismiss any stereotypes about them that they do not identify with. This is what was talked about on the video earlier about SOGI ideology. LGBTQ, this is some other information that they would teach that is diametrically opposed many times to what anyone in a traditional sense would teach their children. There are some people in our community that wouldn't have any kind of issue with this, and I understand that. We live in a pluralistic society, meaning we all have different belief systems, but this information in the public square, this is ideology and it does not belong in a school. So let's look at what it said in the first paragraph here, excuse me. The first paragraph here, it says, in order to build understanding and respect for LGBTQ people and related issues in your school and community, it is important to be educated on the history of it and to be exposed to viewpoints that will expand your own. The first step is becoming clear and confident about who you are personally. Then you will become more open-minded and accepting of who other people are. It is normal to sometimes be critical or judgmental of others who do not think or act like we do. However, this is a mindset that can be unlearned and improved. Unlearned and improved. The words double bind, that is a psychological condition that happens to kids when they are put in situations where there are dueling authorities. Joel Thornton, he is one of the attorneys that supports us in Atlanta with the student rights campaign and parent rights campaign. This is what he wrote in a letter when we were working on the library legislation, and the bold I inserted in there. But presenting sexually explicit materials or alternate lifestyles in schools also creates cultural conflicts between the worldview presented in school and the values fostered by parents. This creates a cultural dissonance as children have to process the conflicting worldviews presented by dueling authority figures. This violates the private realm of the family and the parents' fundamental right to direct the upbringing of their children. This is why we need to gatekeep. This is why we need to have discussions like this. This is what social and emotional learning is about. This is why we're here together. I wish more people would have come. I can understand why they might not have, but it is summertime too. But if you'll play that video for me there, I want to show you what I had to dig into to find this information. Is to discuss the strategic placement of the social emotional learning lessons in the Edgenuity platform that is in the actual class of social emotional learning by the name of Purpose Prep. Purpose Prep has several modules, and it would take me several minutes to just read every name of every module available to them. So these are all the different things. Some of these lessons could be quite possibly benign or even beneficial for your student, but the ones that I want to discuss with you are the ones that could actually harm your students.
So you would have to determine for yourself just what you want your student to learn about. My guess is from seeing the news over the past few months and everyone that is lashing out against these school boards because of these woke lessons within the schools, my guess would be that a lot of parents would not be in agreement to have their child in this indoctrinating kind of information. So you can make the decision yourself as I show you and consider, why would Purpose Prep bury this information to where I would have to access it by going through 84 lessons. I think it was 84 lessons that I had to go to before I could unlock these particular modules. It's all housed right here in this climate and culture transformation chapter. Climate, culture, transformation, all three of these words would be buzzwords for the information that's controversial today. But let's just look at, there's 4 sections, and like I said, I had to go through every single one of these lessons before I could access this because they're locked until you complete them. So within each one of these lessons, as you'll see here when I click on the LGBTQ lesson, there's several lessons within it. Now, it's up to you. Maybe you are fine with your child being taught about LGBTQ. That is your parental right. But there are many parents that do not want this information showcased on the public school platforms. And there are several parents that would not be down for teaching these woke lessons, diversity, anti-racism, equity, and then certainly they would not be down for having their child in a lesson that is action civics. The call to action assignments, these responses are recorded into a data record that is collected on your children. Some of their responses could even inform these data collection agencies, which probably could even end up in a government agency eventually. It could convey to them what the home, the family values are, the values, the beliefs, even probably the political affiliation that each family has. This is highly invasive to our privacy as a republic, and parents, no matter if you're for or against any of these kinds of things, do you really want a data record built for life on your child? Do you really want anyone to have that kind of information about you? This is Marsha Metzger with Choose Now. Consider what's going on and stay informed. Thank you.
So let's go straight into the next video.
The purpose of this video is...
Not that one. All right. This is one of those that just was in that drop down. I'm going to just go ahead and play that at the same time.
How can I create a culture of respect and safety for those deciding to come out? Coming out is a process. There are 10 million Americans who are openly a part of the LGBTQ community, and each of them have their own story. Personally speaking, I had a dad who was very homophobic, and so he was very mentally and emotionally abusive towards me, and I let his ideologies and his opinion dictate how I would then conduct myself. And so I was very fearful to come out, and I was fine with staying in the closet simply because I thought that everyone would judge me. And so when I was 17 years old, my sister actually outed me to my dad. After telling me that I could trust her and that she wouldn't tell anyone, she actually ended up telling my entire family. But still to this day, I would never take it back or have anything be different because I'm so appreciative. It took for her to push me like that for me to learn to become myself that much faster and be myself that much better. And I was so surprised because when I came out finally to my peers in high school, everyone received me with open arms. And it just was so funny to me because, you know, my fear of coming out was that everyone would treat me differently, and it was the complete opposite. People really respected me. People really admired me for being able to be myself. And so for those who are struggling with coming out, first I want to say to you guys, it's okay. It is okay. You may feel alone. It may be times when you are alone, but trust that I care. There are millions of people in the world who care. So So if you are watching this and you are contemplating coming out, when the time is right, it will happen. For those who don't have this particular struggle, ways in which you can support someone that's trying to come out is being compassionate. You never know someone's story. You can really negatively impact someone by judging them or by trying to bully them or make them feel some type of way about them being them. So I say be compassionate, be understanding, and be open. Now's the time to really learn how to deal with people who are different than you, so that when you are older and an adult in the real world, you'll be able to understand people that much better. But I just want to challenge you guys with one thing. If you know anyone in your school that's coming out, if you know anyone that may be battling it, I would like for you guys to go up to them and let them know how proud you are of them, for them being themselves, how proud you are of them, for them even opening up to allow their true self to shine through. I challenge you guys to do that.
That probably speaks on for itself. Can you imagine the double bind our students are in? Imagine their hearts. When you have parents at home trying to lead their children one way, and then you would have that at school. This is why I do what I do. At this point, if I didn't do it after finding these things, it would be a sin of omission for me. When you are talking about your dad's ideology was impressing on him, and now he's taking his ideology. Ideology does not belong in schools. Folks, this is how we stay out of the weeds when we confront these issues. I'm not taking any kind of issue with this young man at all. I have gay friends and I love them dearly. They're in a particular walk in their journey, and I will always be there to speak truth in their life. But they know how I feel with the way I believe. And in an autonomous country, we should be able to speak to how we believe freely. But when our children, and their brains are still forming, and putting them in this situation where there's the dueling authority issues, that is not conducive to learning. That is socially and emotionally abusive. I'm sorry, it just is. So sexual safety. Now, this is very challenging because I want to talk about this very delicately with you. This young man, if he is a homosexual recipient partner, he factually represents the highest risk on the spectrum for HIV, AIDS, or any other sexually transmitted disease or infection. You can go to these two websites and you will see it all day, every day, that this particular young man would meet every dynamic of that risk. So for them to use this young man as their poster child for sexual safety is unconscionable. So if you'll go ahead and play that video, I think that's no, I have one more after that.
What does it mean to practice sexual safety? Well, first, I want to start by saying that I understand that at some point in time in life, maybe you will have a sexual experience, but it's important to be safe. There are so many things in this world that can occur to you from having unsafe sex. So I want you to really pay attention to what I'm going to say. First, make sure you get consent. Every single time requires consent. No means no. If someone doesn't seem like they want to, if someone doesn't seem like they're in their right mind, if someone's body language is not telling you that they want to, that means no. For sure, yes, every time is the green light to even practice sexual safety. That's first. Second, there are different contraceptives that help in practicing safe sex. The first one is birth control. Birth control is helpful in preventing pregnancy. That is all that birth control is helpful for doing. You cannot take birth control and expect not to have or get any STIs or STDs. That is not the right contraceptive for that. The ideal contraceptive to use to practice sexual safety is condoms. Condoms are 99% of the time going to protect you from certain STIs, STDs, and pregnancies. However, what a lot of people don't understand is there are a lot of STIs that you can still get when using a condom still. The first one being HPV. HPV is an STI that is transmitted through skin contact. So simply rubbing up against someone's bare skin can transmit HPV. Although abstinence is the for sure way to 100% abstain from STIs, STDs, and pregnancies, it's not always the most realistic answer. And so that's why it's important to practice safe sex. If you are sexually active and you need to see a doctor for testing or to get contraceptives such as birth control or condoms, you don't have to necessarily have your parents' permission to speak to your doctor about these things. Your doctor can give you insight that your parents cannot give you. It's not that you want to have secrecies or secrets that you're keeping from your parents, but it's to know that if you're not getting that information from your parents, there are still other avenues to gain that information to make sure that you're protecting yourself. The reason that it's important to gain consent before practicing any sexual activity is because there is a such thing as rape. There are millions of people in the world who have experienced rape or date rape, which is the act of involuntarily having your body used in ways that you're not personally looking for. And so that's why it's important to gain consent so that you're sure that you're not hurting anyone mentally, emotionally, physically, or spiritually. There are some STDs and STIs that are uncurable. There are some STDs and STIs and diseases that you may get from not practicing safe sex that will stick with you for the rest of your life, that you will have to take medication for. There are some STIs and STDs that unfortunately kill people because they are so toxic to your body and your healthy blood cells. I challenge you to look up how important it is to practice safe sex and to also look up different STIs or STDs that you could realistically get from not practicing sexual safety.
Was that about the most confused episode you've ever seen? It was so wrong. The information was emphatically false. These are children's lives we're talking about. This is not anything, this is so dangerous. And when I would have never started really studying social emotional learning if when I did the open record request on this county, if I was not told that this is what they were using to teach sex education. So this one is a doozy. This is, for one thing, he didn't even believe that condoms are 99%. Did you hear the inflection in his voice? 99% effective? They're not. So I think you can grasp that what he is saying here, there's all kind of mixed up information in it. When I teach abstinence education, I take far more than 4.5 minutes to teach all of those important concepts. That is the most dangerous thing I've ever seen in the sexual education world, ever. That is the worst one I've ever seen. So, come on. It wouldn't work before, and now it's going to work overtime. So anyway, and then what about undermining the parents? Do you remember in the initial video we saw that is common with comprehensive sex education? So this is the last video on anti-racism. We want to go ahead and start that one, and then I will try to get some questions from you because I know we're going a little longer. Hang on, there you go. Wow. Hang on a minute. There we go. Stop. There you go. It's going. Got it.
What is systemic racism? First, racism is defined by social scientists as a system of advantage based on race. In order for that to happen, system, education, banking, media, and so on. Now, systemic racism is a term used to describe how systems and structures that are a part of everyday life create inequity based on race. Systemic racism ultimately creates a situation in which there are more hurdles for people who are, in this case, not white. For example, research shows that with the exact same resumes, people with traditional sounding names like Tom, John, Sarah, and Rachel are twice as likely to get a callback for a job than people with ethnic sounding names like Jamal, Samir, Sharongo, or Jalen. Everyone has the potential to be treated unfairly by any system, but some groups are treated unfairly disproportionately. A big example of this you may hear about in the news is police brutality and the shooting of unarmed African Americans. Even though many white people are also shot by police officers, there is a disproportionate number of unarmed African Americans shot. Since 2015, over 2,400 white people have been killed by police, while over 1,300 blacks and 907 Latinos have been killed by police. But when we look at that by deaths per million, blacks are 31 out of a million, Latinos are 23 per million, and whites are 13 per million. That is a disproportion. Another example is in criminal justice. According to decades of research, if you were born a black teen, male or female, you are more likely to be tried for a first offense, receive jail time for a first offense, receive longer prison sentences, and be tried as an adult for the same offense as white teens, or male or female. Another example is if you are in an American history class, but your curriculum does not incorporate the contributions of people who are not white, or a literature class and you don't read any literature written by non-white authors and poets. That is also called underrepresentation. Now, reverse racism is a little complicated, but the simple answer is no, it is not real. Although all of us have the ability to be prejudiced and discriminate against others, not all of us can turn that prejudice into laws, policies, and social practices. In the United States, white people have historically controlled our systems and institutions and race relations. Think of it this way. Are there any laws or policies that have been created and passed by non-white people that discriminated against white people, either on purpose or on accident? No. So until white people have been systematically marginalized through slavery, racial terrorism, Jim Crow, and other attempts to stop them from voting and other practices, I cannot say reverse racism is real. What's the difference between prejudice and racism? That's an important question and an important distinction. Prejudice is, which we all are capable of being prejudiced, is simply prejudging or making judgments about someone or something with very limited information. On the other hand, racism is a system of advantage based on race. So the difference between racism and prejudice can be thought of this way. You can be prejudiced against people, say, with an accent. But unless you have the power to pass laws or policies on how those people are treated, then you're not really being racist. Again, the thing that's really important about racism is understanding that it's about power and how folks can use power to shape the conditions for other people.
That is one thing, but our children being subjected to it. And how will this make the relationships in our schools? I mean, how will that work out? We can't just divide and divide and divide. We believe that division should only be taught in a math class, not like this. So, anti-racism, you heard that one line. He said, I cannot say that reverse racism is real. You know, there's one thing when you hate people or when you speak out against them. It's another thing to explain something. What is a white child supposed to do with that? I mean, seriously, what are they supposed to do with that? And then two, this is the health book, and I'm going to go through this super quick. Some barrier methods, we're talking about conflicting messages here. This is a literal health book for normally 8th, 9th, 10th grade, and it's normally taught in PE. But anyway, some barrier methods prevent STDs. What does prevent mean? Prevent, like nada, prevent. Then you say safe sex, and they've said safe sex in the video a minute ago too. There's no such thing as safe sex outside of a monogamous relationship. And the CDC even says that online, so multiple partners are never safe sex. But now if you're going to say pregnancy-wise that there is an 18% failure rate, but then you're going to say that wearing a condom is safe sex and it prevents STDs, that's a conflicting message. And this is why we see so many people coming into our pregnancy centers too, because they're not informed on a lot of these things, or they're mixed up, or they've been led to believe that it'll solve everything. Let's talk about the woke approach here. The patch, it says it's worn on all these different places on the upper body of a person who can get pregnant. Now, anyway, all right, so then let's ask you this. What, did I do something wrong? I mean, it's just crazy. Is it appropriate for a school to ask what statements best describe your romantic attraction toward others? What business is that of a school? What business of it? Now, here's the teacher. This is what he says. If you choose to be abstinent, that's great. If you choose to have sex and or use birth control, that's also great. As long as you're being safe, respectful, and above all consensual, you're good. Either way, you are a human being, and as such, you are always deserving of rights, dignity, and respect. Well, thank goodness that someone just took care of my parenting for me, right? I mean, how come this person gets to insert himself in something that many of us teach our students is so seriously sacred? Why does he get this platform in the life of a child? That is ridiculous. Then he says, and never let anybody tell you or make you feel or think otherwise. And it normalizes homosexuality all through it. They'll have pictures of same-sex relationships. Marcus and Alex have been going out. The next one, your friend Jason is in a committed relationship with his boyfriend Carlos. These two girls are dating. Then let's talk about 4th and 5th grade in Tift County. 4th and 5th grade subscribes to Puberty, the Wonder Years. Now, I went through some of their hard copy books, and they're what I call comprehensive sex ed light. She's got a little bit of information there that's something I probably wouldn't go for, but it wasn't just totally in your face. But now I didn't have access to the videos that are in there, so I don't know what was said in the videos. But if you go on her website, her Facebook page and website, and you read her blogs, she is a completely woke educator, and she has all of these kinds of things on her Facebook. Now, if it's going to go digital, or if there's a revision, and especially if the laws are going to admit these kinds of things in the public schools, do you think that she's going to take kids into this younger and younger? Yes, she will. Matter of fact, in Georgia, when we just had our health standards revised in the 2nd grade, they're wanting every body part taught to a child. And it all depends on what teacher is standing there in front of your kids. Are they going to teach that this is a person with a vagina and this is a person with a penis in order to set up the SOGI terminology, sexual orientation and gender identity? It's quite possible. All genders can have uteruses. I mean, really. Y'all, this is somebody's child. Look at that child. And the young black man that was the transgender man, that is somebody's child. We have to do a better job of gatekeeping. We have to. I mean, but this is on this woman's Facebook page, just plain and simple. As states introduce legislation rooted in fear, bias, and misinformation, transgender individuals face a difficult future. Wendy Sellers is a woke teacher with an agenda. Parents get to decide if they want this person teaching their child. Their Facebook page reveals her platform, and it's comprehensive sex ed. These are the libraries, your libraries for your students in every single state that allows EBSCO, Galileo, well, Galileo is Georgia, but EBSCO is in every state, in every university. I can take, actually just yesterday, I got the password for the library here, and there's all kind of stuff. I can show you porn on our school library access. These two pictures here, the Dirty Dozen list, this is on the National Center for Sexual Exploitation. They made the Dirty Dozen list, the EBSCO system and your child's Chromebook. And this is, by the way, you see this House Bill 516 and Senate Bill 226. We got shut down by the Georgia Department of Education. They would not take the word library out of the obscenity exemption in the law. I will be doing a video to inform you about that on our Facebook or our group page that I'll have you sign up for. So here's the problem, and we're about to wrap this up, is oversight. The word oversight, you can define it two ways. One is an unintentional failure to notice or do something, and then the other side of that, though, is the action of overseeing something. And that's what gatekeeping is about, and it can be done in a positive way. The question, though, is whose oversight? Whose fault is this? Is this all the school board's fault? Is this all the administration's fault? Whose fault is it? Is it our fault for not getting in there and looking at it too? Did we just become consumers with our children's mind and allow them to just go in and not look at what their little minds were looking at? Are we the ones that are supposed to be safeguarding our children's minds? Yeah, we are. This is our community issue here. You know, it truly is. We all have to gatekeep. We all have to hold our school boards and our administrators accountable by attending the school board meetings. I would fathom to say that a large portion of the people in this group tonight have never been to one. I mean, I just would. I mean, who wants to go to a school board meeting, you know? So, but now we need to. We need to. This is for their sake. We are in a culture right now that we can't afford not to. And we can organize these things, like some churches can take a couple of months, you know, each or something like that. But I know as a parent, if I had to have my child in a public school, I would definitely want to be involved in the school board. So how did this happen? The subject is a landmine for school administrations, and it's a gold mine for progressives. They are making money hand over fist with all of these grants. Biden administration just totally shut off funding for abstinence education in committee, or the House did. They've shut it off. It's in committee. So we're going to have to fight to be able to keep the funding to keep going with abstinence. They have put out millions to reinstate Planned Parenthood's stronghold, and they're getting almost every bit of the funding. Look it up. So anyway, this is one of the things that's going on with community leaders, including pastors, including administrators. All of us are afraid of being canceled, lashed out against. So how do we overcome that? We say, we don't want any of those blank blank people in our school, or anything taught about these blank blank people, meaning any of those identities or whatever. We say, we want a zero tolerance for ideology in our schools, period. Don't get in the weeds with each of those offerings on that buffet, y'all. Talk about ideology, zero tolerance for ideology. You can't get canceled that way. I mean, it covers all of it. Our children do not belong in a double bind, putting them in a conundrum. Say no to ideology. It's not political to get involved with the school board. And remember, the control is local. Our school boards can reject social and emotional learning. Our school boards can even turn off access to EBSCO. We don't have to pay that exorbitant fee. It is thousands of dollars to have access to that every year. We have to stand. How do we do it? Well, do you have PTSD yet? Since I've shown you all this, you're probably about to fall off your seat. I'm sorry. But here are the solutions for this. I have a petition here for you all to sign, and I'll have a petition uploaded to the group page. Jennifer, are they floating around the sign-up sheets and stuff like that? She'll be passing them around, and But you can sign the petition to sign off to eliminate social emotional learning curriculum. There's a toolkit that I have on the Facebook page already to opt your students out of social and emotional learning, to opt them out of any of those other kind of subjects. You can look through that. Those actually have been formatted and reviewed by the attorneys in Atlanta that I've been referring to. The Seal of Confidence project is something that we are doing, and it'll say Seal of Confidence, and it's for them to meet the guidelines with us. So then, beyond having the Seal of Confidence process, if you are to tell your school that you want them to earn that seal, I think that they will take notice of this, and we will deliver that to our school board. This is the parent toolkit, and Protect Student Health Georgia is the organization that I'm involved with, and they have designed that, just as I just told you, and you can download that information and have it taken in. So this is the Seal of Confidence, really quick, because we've already gone over this pretty much through the whole presentation. Is, you know, once we start at the top with the administrators and the open record request, we just travel around this whole circle. This takes this entire community, and you see all those outliers that says truth forms in that area. Once we do the open record request and we start educating people, the truth forms, the community leaders, this right here, there's several community leaders in here. You're learning about what's going on. We can get volunteers after this. We can do outreach. We can go and work with our school boards and even minister to them. For those of you that are pastors, talk with them, educate them why this is inappropriate. We can advocate, we can develop legislation. We're working with parents. They know they're supported. Gatekeeping begins for them, and I love using words against the woke community. Peaceful equity starts when we all get involved and we all stand in truth and know the truth of what's going on. So that's what that is. I hope that we can all be winsome to win some of these people and help them. With wisdom, we can become their support and speak into their lives as they lead, because, you know, the administrators, they don't know where to start to stand up. I mean, honestly, and a lot of them, when you tell them this, they're in shock. So this is your state school superintendent. Get your cameras out and take a picture of that. Give a call, fax a letter to him, call Adam Hathaway or send him an email, info@Tift Schools, and ask them to turn off social emotional learning in EBSCO. Ask them to do away with it. They have the control to do these things. I know that it's the school board that's ultimately going to do it, but let them know your voice, that you do not want these in your school. If that's what you feel, if you're in agreement with what I've been telling you. All of this information is factual. You can look it up. So what can you do? You can volunteer to review school curriculum. I go into school districts and I need people to help review it. You can educate others. The Choose Now Tift County Facebook group. If you've got your phone, go ahead and request to join, and I will admit you into the group so you can see all the videos and information that I will be uploading. I also have a Facebook page. And attend school board meetings. Remember, it's local control. Attend them. Don't put this on auto. We can't have our kids on cruise control. And become a gatekeeper in your community. And also, this is not free, even though we do free presentations. If you would, go to my website, choose-now.org, if you would like to become a sponsor or a corporate sponsor, even when we do these events, we would appreciate your donations for sure, because I will be traveling all throughout DeRisa many, many times, making different meetings during the day with administrators and all of these things, and we will be getting the word out to these communities. So anyway, choose now to become a gatekeeper, and gatekeeping sure looks good on you, and I hope that this has been informative for you. I'd love to give you about a 5-minute break, and anybody that wants to stay and ask questions, I will be around. I know it's 8:21 right now, and I'm sorry it went that long, but how many of you feel that this was information you needed to know? Yeah, I think we all feel that way. How many of you really want to gatekeep for children? I mean, honestly, there's pastors in here. I would be glad to come and do a presentation for your community. I would love to help any way that I can, and I would love to be a consultant for you. My phone number is all over the place with all these documents and everything. And I also have some business cards here I would love to share with you. But all the information is on the choosenow.org, or it's on the Tift County or choosenow-Tift County group page. So anyway, that is everything. So you're dismissed to take a break and come back in here if you have questions, or you can go ahead and be dismissed for the evening. Thank you so much for coming, and please continue to stand with us. Our students are worth it, and we're going to get this seal in Tift County, right? Yes. All right, good deal. Thank you. So about 5-10 minutes, I'll be starting again. So we're at 8:22. Let's just say 8:30. I'll be starting again if you have questions.